What we'll do then is we'll go right back to the beginning. So I'm curious to see. Obviously, you said that you came to flying later in life. Not that you're old, but like you came further down the line. Let's say. So where did it all start off? Where did you always want to be a pilot when you were a kid, or like?
Yeah, I think I did, but it's just I just didn't have access to it. And only access to me came when I was in secondary school through the Air Cadets, and then into university. So I was quite lucky. I finished uni with a PPL from the Honourable Company of Air Pilots, and I'd recommend anyone who's thinking to go and apply over there. But then, like, I studied aerospace engineering. There were no jobs in 2008 when I finished. The aviation industry was struggling from the banking crisis, the financial crisis, so it was just a nightmare. So I went into oil and gas, and that was phenomenal. But life takes over. You know, you try and buy a house, so you don't have the money to go flying every weekend, so you just kind of park it. And it was only after about 10 years in the company, unfortunately, my job was at risk. I went through a redundancy process, but thankfully they kept me on. But I remember before the process had finished, I got my letter, and I was driving home, and I drove past the gym, and you're like, oh, can I really afford to keep a gym membership going when I might be out of work? And then I got home, and I remember looking at the Skybox, and I was like, can I really afford the 70 quid a month to keep my Sky going? Am I not going to need that money later? And I think going through that process, it made me realize that life is not just like, this sounds a bit deep now. It's not it's not there to just sleepwalk, and you need to decide what you want to do with it, and what makes you tick and what makes you happy. So I was just like, you know what? All of this is a load of nonsense, really. It's just a facade. Somebody pays you reasonably well, but as soon as you take the paycheck away, you've got nothing. So I was like, well, what's the point of like grinding day in and day out purely for something that you're not that fussed about? So I just decided, well, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and then a friend of mine, he was a captain at EasyJet, and EasyJet were looking for the pilots for Amy Johnson initiative, and they were offering conditional employment on the basis that if you finish the course with L3 or CAE at the time. But the problem is they were asking for 120k pretty much up front for the MPL course or the traditional course. So I went through the process. Thankfully, I didn't get in. They said I didn't demonstrate enough captaincy during the interview, and I was a bit down. But then when I sort of digested and sat back, I looked and I was like, hang on a minute, I've got a PPL. Okay, I've got 80 hours, which is not huge, but it's still. And then I looked at what the total requirements were, and it was 200 hours to get a CPL, 150 hours to get an MEIR. And I was like, well, I'm pretty much a third of the way there, and I'm pretty certain it's not going to cost me 120 grand to get to the end. So I just started going to the airfield on a weekend and plodding on. Anyway, I'd start off. I'd saved about 20 grand up in my ISAR. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I got to the airfield, and initially I was like, I'll fly once a month and see how that goes. And then I was like, well, I've got the time and I've got a bit of money in the bank, so why don't I fly every weekend? So I'll just rock up every day, and then you progress through your hour building, and you think, well, why don't I enroll in ATPL grant school? So I did with CATS. That was a nightmare, because I thought it would just be like PPL grant school where you just read, half an hour before your exam and you pass straight away.
Use your common sense.
But very quickly I realised that you couldn't just sit there with ATPL books watching Game of Thrones in the background and think you'd get away with it. No. It was solid study. So I was like, right, well, how am I going to get through this? The only way I could find the time was start my day about 4 or 5 in the morning, study before work, 2 or 3 hours, and then go into work. Got through those in about 8 months' time. That was extreme. I had no life, literally no life, every day. Monday to Friday studying, and then on the weekend flying. But it's, I think of ATPLs and it's like, it's not a process you want to do slowly.
It is. It's a grind, isn't it?
Yeah, we found the hard way. I mean, personally, me, I started my ATPLs actually, I believe, November last year. So almost a year. And I was taking it slow. I was writing out all the content. I had all the books and everything, rewriting it. And only in the last 4 months, I've come to realise, hang on, I'm not getting anywhere with this. If I was to do a test, I'd maybe scrape 50%. And I think what helped was the fact that Jacob, we both agreed, because we were doing this, we're going to try and do it at the same stage, at the same rate. And I really needed personally to kick my ass into gear nicely.
I think when you learn as well, when you're having to learn on your own, for me personally, like it's really hard. Like my attention span is next to nothing.
Yeah.
So for the first set of exams, I really had to, like you say, get my ass into gear and focus. But like now we'll be able to run at the same pace at the same time. We'll be able to bounce off each other. And I think, to be honest, that might help a lot more.
Yeah.
In terms of going forward.
Yeah.